Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, Appeal Court orders retrial of Senate President Bukola Saraki by Code of Conduct Tribunal on 3 out of an 18-count charge of alleged false assets declaration. House of Representatives Committee faults alleged exemption of some MDAs from remitting funds into the Treasury single account. Ruling APC makes U-turn, congratulates the PDP on the outcome of its national convention as the opposition party begins reconciliation of aggrieved members. And human rights group Amnesty International accuses European governments of complicity in the torture and abuse of refugees and migrants in Libya.
On Business News tonight, International Labour Organization expects 30 million jobs to be created across the world in 2018.
On sports news, FIFA sanctions Nigeria for fielding an ineligible player in the 2018 World Cup qualifier against Algeria in November.
And from Abuja, fuel scarcity bites harder in the Federal Capital Territory as motorists grapple with the consequences.
We begin with the ruling of the Court of Appeal ordering the Code of Conduct Tribunal to carry out a retrial of the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, on 3 out of the 18-count amended charges of false declaration of assets brought against him by the federal government. The appellate court ruled that 15 out of the 18 charges lack merit and there was no evidence to substantiate the 15 counts as valid charges. Our correspondent Amaka Okafor reports.
The case is over.
6 months after the acquittal of the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, by the Code of Conduct Tribunal of an 18-count charge of false declaration of assets, the Court of Appeal Abuja Division has ruled that the Senate President indeed has a case to answer regarding 3 out of the 18 counts. The federal government had in September 2015 at the CCT filed an 18-count charge against the Senate President in charges 1 to 3, 7 to 17 and 18. The federal government had alleged that the Senate President failed to declare his properties, assets and income, while charges 4, 5 and 6 alleged that he made a false declaration as to how he acquired 2 properties in Ikoyi, Lagos and 1 in Maitama, Abuja. The appeal court, however, dismissed 15 out of the 18 counts as lacking in merit. Justice Tinuade Akomalafe Wilson, who delivered the lead judgment of the 3-member panel, held that credible evidence was provided by the prosecution witness number 4, who is the bank officer to the Senate President, and prosecution witness number 1, an investigative officer with the EFCC, on counts 4, 5 and 6, to indicate that there is a difference between what the Senate President declared on his asset form and how he actually acquired the properties, to warrant the defendant being called upon to offer explanations on how he acquired the properties disclosed in the 3 counts.
What is important is that at least there's a finding that the Code of Conduct was wrong and that the case should go back to that court. So that is major thing that is important. So well, when we get there, we will know what to do.
It's important as lawyers that we get to see the reasoning, we understand exactly why they said what they said, why they made certain decisions, and then we will take it from there. But the good news is, out of 18, 15 were knocked out.
This judgment is not yet a green light for a retrial at the Code of Conduct Tribunal, as the Senate President may still decide to go for an appeal at the Supreme Court. But whether that route will be explored remains to be seen. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, believes he's vindicated by the verdict of the Court of Appeal that ordered his retrial for just 3 charges. A statement from the spokesperson to the Senate President says the judgment has confirmed the position of the tribunal that the prosecution's case was entirely based on hearsay and not on any concrete evidence. The statement reads, quote, "We believe that upholding the no-case submission by Dr. Saraki with regards to 15 of the 18-count charges vindicates the innocence of the Senate President. At least today's judgment has confirmed the position of the tribunal that the prosecution's case was entirely based on hearsay, not on any concrete evidence." End of quote. The statement insists that Senator Saraki is convinced about his innocence on the 3 counts and hopes that the aspect of the judgment will not stand. He, however, expressed his faith in the judiciary and its ability to dispense justice without bias. An ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives investigating the implementation of the Treasury single account is faulting a letter from the presidency exempting an account from the NNPC from being included into the Treasury single account. The committee has been mandated by the House to probe the implementation of the Treasury single account policy. The committee claims to have found out that some banks are holding on to almost 50 billion naira in accounts that should have been closed and monies remitted to the Treasury single account. Our correspondent Larry Lassisi now reports.
Members of the ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives investigating the implementation of the Treasury single account policy. Appearing before them are representatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, and some commercial banks. According to the chairman of the committee, almost 50 billion naira is still in the account of some banks. The lawmakers want to know if the central bank is aware of these accounts.
So we are aware that they are still holding some account. It's not yet 100% transfer as we speak.
If you are aware that these accounts have been operated, are you aware of the approval? Do you have the copy of the approval, or you don't have?
The only approval that I'm aware of is that of the NNPC JV account. I saw that approval from the presidency for them.
Copy of the approval?
Well, I don't have it here, but I'm sure the representative of NNPC has it.
Not correct.
The committee sought to know the reasons given by the banks for this non-compliance.
There's some accounts under court processes that they are still holding, maybe under garnish order. Some are accounts that are exempted, like the judiciary, for example, the National Assembly, for example. These are some accounts they are still holding.
A copy of the said approval allegedly given to the NNPC by the Chief of Staff to the President was given to the committee, but they're not satisfied.
When someone says he has been directed to do something, then let us see the evidence of the direction. That is what will lay to bear this matter. And that will not only finalize it as an investigative committee set up by the House to also get to the bottom of the legality, constitutionality of the matter. Even if it is an executive order, this House must get to the bottom of whether that order itself is in compliance with the provisions of the Constitution and other extant laws.
The committee has given the banks another chance to also appear, insisting on the presence of their top management staff before the panel. Lanre Lassisi, Channels Television News.
Now let's get some facts about the Treasury Single Account, that's a TSA. It's a public accounting system using a single account to ensure all revenue receipts and payments are done through a consolidated revenue account at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Also, the TSA allows government banking to be unified to enable the relevant stakeholders, such as the Ministry of Finance and Accountant General of the Federation, to have full oversight of all cash flows across different bank accounts. The pilot test of the TSA commenced in 2012 using a unified structure of accounting for 217 government ministries, departments and agencies for accountability and transparency in public fund management. The TSA ensures adequate monitoring of government revenue receipts and expenditure and blocks leakages, as no MDA is allowed to keep any operational bank account. The TSA is expected to check incidents of idle cash lying over extended periods in bank accounts held by MDAs, while the government continues to borrow to execute its budgets. Now, the scheme also covers all MDAs as well as other institutions and parastatals that collect revenues and monies payable to the federal government, including all forms of receipts, refunds, operating surpluses, transfers, donations, overpayment, taxes, and custom duties. Now, let's get a bit of perspective on all this now. I'm being joined on the news at 10 by the co-founder of Budget, Mr. Segun Onibinde. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10.
It's a pleasure being here.
So you're a man of numbers, as we know. So what is your impression about this whole TSA and the way it's been structured, the way it's been organized, from what I've read out now? It's
a good idea. From the beginning, that we had issues with some agencies had tons of billions sitting in accounts in banks, and the government was also borrowing at an high rate. So when it came, it was very important. But somehow, you know, a lot of agencies, a lot of banks are still having the backdoor arrangement, in which the funds, on that different guises, are saying, we don't want to put these accounts within the TSA framework. And I guess that's what has come into light today, that NNPC has some accounts which they have linked to some joint venture arrangement with their IOCs, up to 50 billion naira that's within the bank. So I think this discretion that the president can give an order on the TSA and give a counter order to say we're excluding or exempting some people is conflicted. And I guess it's very important that it should be set straight for once. So regarding that NNPC account, there was a letter from the presidency to say these are the reasons why. Yeah. But for the other monies that have been found in the banks, or this 50 billion we're talking about, we don't know. Yeah. So how is it going to run if you find different people having different excuses? Why? Did you listen to some of the excuses that were given about? I did to some of them. And you know, the problem is that everybody can come up with different excuses to say we want to keep the money within the banks. And you know, banks love public sector funds, almost at zero liquidity, at almost zero interest rate. They love that kind of money. And I guess that's where the conversation is going. The government itself should not be sending conflicting statements in some sort of way to say, because once you leave a small loophole, everybody can interpret that widely and say, this covers me in some sort of way. We will notice that the conversation and the whole problem between Intel and the Nigeria Port Authority has been about that Intel should pass its funds, its dues, the entire dues, through the TSA account, and Intel doesn't want their way. But they have not finally found a middle ground. So it's important that the government should clearly do a better white paper, you know, to clearly state this. The Treasury single account, what does it cover and what does it not cover? What's the ease of even getting this money back to the MDAs? Because once you leave a small loophole, people begin to interpret that in different ways and keep it hope on. Even judiciary and the National Assembly, why can't they not be in the TSA? People will worry about executive control over their funds, but we're talking about these funds reside within the CBN. So it's not even under an executive control. Yeah, but in your experience, is there any condition in which there can be an exemption? Is it always the case that an exemption is suspicious? Yeah, there can be exemptions, but I think the way the exemptions have been handled, because the conversation today is to say the Chief of Staff to the President should come and exempt. If someone can go back to the Chief of Staff or through an agency of government to say, or the Ministry of Finance, I need an exemption, and it's not clearly stated in a proper guiding document, you know, anybody can pick that up and say, I got an exemption somewhere. That should be a proper guide document that is public to say, it's on this basis, because maybe it's linked to a counterpart fund, maybe it's tied to a joint venture fund. That's why we give this exemption. So it's clear to everyone why you would seek an exemption, why you might be denied an exemption. So how best do you think revenue accruable to the federal government can be handled? Because when this whole TSA idea came up, a lot of people were unhappy about it, still are, looking at the way it's being structured. What then should be, if you were to give advice on how it should be handled, what would you say? I think it's a good idea. I believe that it helps check corruption, it checks abuse. Government can see the entire cash flow at a single point in time. Definitely with some agreements or some partnership the government has gone to, if the TSA process is not smooth enough in terms of fund transfer, in terms of access to funds, it could actually delay a lot of projects or even break some form of covenants. So there still needs to be much more deeper and holistic look into it. The key goal was for the government to see its entire cash flow at the point. It's also prone to abuse because you find out that the federal government's debt to the CBN is rising. And the conversation is that we are borrowing against the TSA. But you know that most funds of the TSA don't wholly belong to the federal government itself. Most of these are counterpart funds, they are pension liability, so in some sort of way you can't just say we are spending against the TSA. There needs to be much more definition to say this is the TSA, this is the whole breakdown of the whole money. This is what belongs to the federal government. This is what belongs to the NDAs and the covenants and the whole counterpart arrangements that they are involved to. But I think I like it because it will have been a whole of abuse in terms of accounting process, in terms of even cash flow within MDAs. It's very, very important we have it.
All right, co-founder of Budget, Ms. Segun Onibinde, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot.